Hey there, this is Seth Waters from Channel 9 coming to you from NDC Oslo in the beautiful country of Norway. The colors are so much more better here. We went on. Did you go on the boat tour last night?
No. I should have. I didn't go. I didn't do it.
Turn everything off. Shut the lights off. This is not okay. So,
But it was sunny.
It was beautiful.
It looked amazing.
So introduce yourselves.
I'm David Fowler, the architect on ASP.NET Core.
And I am Damian Edwards, program manager on ASP.NET Core.
How many hours of sleep are you working on? Just let's be honest here.
5 maybe?
Oh, how many days? Just last night?
Oh, yeah, last night.
When did you wake up this morning?
5 a.m.
You were supposed to. You were supposed to say which time. Which
time did I wake up?
Which time?
Which of the 14 times when I woke up?
I'm pretty good now, actually.
Well, it's supposed to dusk is at midnight 30.
Yeah.
And then the sun comes up at 2:30.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I forgot to close the curtains a couple times.
Yeah, that's a rookie mistake.
All right, so for those that are new to ASP.NET or that want to know about ASP.NET Core, what were some of the talks you gave? What was some of the stuff you talked about? How can people get caught up?
The first one was ASP.NET Core, what's new in 2.0. So me and Damian spoke about some new features in ASP.NET Core 2.0. I don't know, we want to talk about
Which a bunch of stuff.
authentication, some breaking changes we made in 2.0.
Security system,
security
Razor,
things.
some smaller stuff.
Yep.
iTag Alba component, I hosted service, I hosted startup, how we light up in Azure with diagnostics and things.
Yeah.
2.0 is coming out in later this year, probably July, August type. So it's not done yet, but we showed off sort of the current preview and things like that. So yeah.
So let's talk about the Razor improvements, then we'll get into the security stuff, and then we'll talk about the tag helper. Oh, too close. She's waving at me. Is this awkward? Is this awkward for you? She's wearing headphones and she can hear me. And so, hello, producer. She didn't like that. So let's start with Razor, then we'll go into the security stuff, and then we'll talk about tag helpers, okay? So what's the new stuff in Razor?
So there's a new thing called Razor Pages that was kind of Damian's brainchild because he hated MVC. For
Wait,
Pages.
what? That's strong.
For Pages. He loves MVC for
Awkward.
Pages.
Everyone loves MVC for Pages. What's
No,
this?
So-
I never
what
liked
is-
MVC.
so what is
for H1.
Pages?
So Razor Pages is part of MVC. It's part of the MVC subsystem of ASP.NET Core. I kind of hate that we call it MVC. It's just part of ASP.NET Core. Like everything's in ASP.NET Core, right? So you have controllers, you have actions. That's great. You have views, which you can return from actions, which is okay. But I always found that a little unnatural. It's a lot of ceremony just to return HTML.
View models.
Yeah. If you want to do it properly, you have to separate models. There's a lot of infrastructure required to keep things separate, copy stuff around. But there's a lot of really good stuff in there that we wanted to utilize in a more page-focused or page-centric mini framework. So it is all the stuff that's really good in the MVC system, but if you're just serving HTML, you create pages. So you create like foo.cshtml. You have a separate model. So rather, it's kind of like a code behind. But there's no derivation between the two. It attaches, and so that means you don't have that tight coupling that you used to have with something like web forms. You can still test the model independent. In fact, the model looks quite a lot like a controller, but it's focused on one type of output on the page that it's attached to.
It's a view model, basically.
It's a view model, right? And so you can kind of bind both ways. You can take arguments in from the routes and all the goodness you can do in MVC. You get the full power of routing, so you can do URL generation, you can do segments, you can do optional routes and constraints and all that wonderful stuff. And because it's Razor, you can get tag helpers, you get view components, you get normal helpers, you get partials, you get layout pages, you get all the great stuff that you get with Razor, but you just say, hey, I want a page. There it is. It's great.
And you can route between MVC views and pages, so it's not like it's one system.
It is
not two
one
different
system.
systems.
So, okay, I'm going to show my age a little bit. The last real production app I wrote was like MVC1.
Nice.
So that was like 2007?
Yeah, so it was 2007. And so I'm trying to understand the pages difference between, is it just like something you would do in web forms, but different?
Not really.
So in our workshop, we wrote an app over the last 2 days that was basically a conference planner app, and we used Pages for the entire thing, and it just feels more focused, like a focused MVC for Pages. It doesn't feel like a different framework.
Right.
So I think.
Well, in fact, we use both. We use controllers for the web API portion.
Yeah.
So we had two projects. We had a back end, which was all API controllers, and it did JSON and all that sort of stuff. And then we had a front end that was all pages.
Yep.
And it worked really well. That's what we're kind of going.
I've always loved using controllers for APIs because that feels really.
It feels natural.
It's like to the bone, right?
Yes.
But so I'm having a hard time visualizing pages. Is it like something like the JavaScript frameworks have with HTML files that bind to like objects?
So it's similar.
It's
Like,
pretty
if you
similar,
think of the layout, right?
Yeah.
If you were doing HTML with MVC, you would still have a controllers folder, and you'd have like a home controller, and on that controller you'd have an index method, right? So there's 3 things I've had to do already. Then I have to build a separate views
View
folder,
model, yeah.
and inside that I have to have a separate folder named after the controller, and then inside that I have to have a CSHTML file named after the action, right? And that's like hello world.
Right.
So I've done 6 or 7 things just to get going, and usually you have a layout
And you
page as
didn't
well.
even talk about passing data from the actual view.
That's just to get Hello World printed.
Right.
As soon as you want to print, pull stuff
Pass
in,
data, yeah.
you have to start thinking about separation of models and all that type of stuff.
So
With
you
a
create a view
page,
model,
you
yeah.
create a pages folder and you put a page in it, and then you write Hello World in it, and you're off to the races. And then when you want to take data in or you want to do processing, you create a page model, which is a separate file that you attach using app model, the same app model that you've always had in Razor. It's no different. And then the two kind of get glued together, so the page can talk to the model, but the model doesn't talk to the page, right? So you can test the model.
Right.
The model is fully testable, it's isolated, you do dependency injection, has all the same methods an MVC controller does.
So properties on the page itself appear in the actual Razor view. So
Right,
you can just,
on the page model.
So you can declare a property on your page model, and then set it in on get.
Yeah.
And then get it, and then show it in the actual.
And in the view you do
Razor
app
page.
model dot whatever the
Whatever
property
block.
was, and it's just there.
Holy cow. And so there are, because I was thinking, when you say view model, I'm thinking like nouns only, right? Like property. Is this too close? You guys, like, is this live? Is this happening right now?
I'll back up a little bit.
No, I'm too loud.
I
I'm
see, you're
holding.
too loud.
Like, see, they adjust it for you, and they're like, Seth, hold this next to your foot, and then it'll sound good. So I'm listening to what you're saying. When I think view model, I'm thinking it's just that POCO or that DTO looking class.
That's the difference. So a view model in traditional MVVM frameworks like Calibre Micro or MVVM is not that.
Right.
It's actually an interactive model that is all testable, but it generally has methods on it. It has logic.
Yeah.
So this is more like that. So it's better to think of Razor Pages as a quasi MVVM style
yeah, that's
framework.
so much better, guys.
And it works really, really nicely.
Oh my gosh, that's so much better, because then instead of having to have a controller to return an action to go to that route,
Yeah, exactly.
instead you literally just call the page and
Right.
there it is.
And the page methods, like the methods you have in the page model, they can still return action results. So if you need the exact same things, if you want to redirect, or you want to go to a different page, or you want to return a not found, or you want to, if you want to return JSON, don't tell anyone I said that. But if you want to, you can.
Return those things, right.
And then we have this other pattern that's quite common in pages when you're building HTML pages, is that you might have a single page that the user looks at, but they can do more than one operation. So you might have an edit button for a current row, and that
Right.
takes you to a different page. But you might have a delete button, right? The delete button acts on the current page, but deletes what you deleted next to it. So you want to be able to have dispatching in the page model. So it's not just do this when a get happens and do this when a post happens. It might be do this on a post if it's the delete operation.
Oh, I see.
And so we have
I
a
see.
full sort of a handler dispatching system, which is very simple. It's just based on a name. It's just a string that you can use to split it up.
And this feels much better, like if you're doing like a spa-like application, can you do it just in a single page and have all the methods
Right.
in
So
there
this
as well?
could be like
Yeah,
your
yeah.
bootstrapping page, right, where you start and then all the spa stuff happens after that.
That's awesome. I have not seen this. When did this come out?
It's in
Just
2.0.
now, just now.
It's brand new.
5 minutes ago.
You just literally, that's why you were up so late.
Yeah.
They wrote it last night.
We just finished it. Yeah.
So that's actually really impressive, because all that controller ceremony to me made sense when we were talking like APIs.
Yeah, it totally makes
Because
sense.
You're
there.
like getting objects and you're pushing stuff out, and you can even put the verbs at
Yeah.
the top.
Doing Conag there.
Yep.
But when you're looking at a page, the interaction could be a little bit different, because I felt like you had to have a ton of action methods in your controller that now you can just put for your specific page.
It felt like the controller action and the view were far away.
Yes.
Right? So flowing data from one to the other was always like declare a view model, have a class, return view of this view model, and then get it in the page and then render it. The page you can declare properties and have that be exposed. And that part I think is what makes it feel
And
so
the
tight.
routes were separate again. So
Yeah.
you would have the routes
Yeah.
in
Yep.
separate, then you'd have controllers and actions separate, but kind of linked.
Yeah.
But you had to remember what you'd set, and then you had the views separate again.
Yep.
With a page, the route is derived from the page name. So if I have a foo.cshml, guess what? It's /foo. But then you can still use routing to augment that. So you can add extra tokens to the end of the URL just directly in your page, or you can call a method in startup to change the route completely, because it's
Right.
all built on the same stuff.
I see. So you can have a special route that routes to a specific page
Yep.
and puts those values into its model.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So
Yep.
that's awesome. I need to look at that. That feels a little more natural to me, and it actually feels a little bit like some of the stuff I've seen in Angular,
Yeah.
right? And Aurelia,
frameworks,
those
yeah.
kind of things. And
Yeah.
so
It fits, right?
yeah, it just
Yeah.
feels a little bit better. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to talk about is security. You said there was a lot of new security. Tell us a little bit about that. I did something with Barry Doran's like a year ago
Yep.
around the policies, I think they were
Yep,
called,
yep.
which was really amazing. Before it was just like, hey, only people in this role, and you had to put it in there. So there's some policy stuff. Is there anything new beyond that?
We made some breaking changes in 2.0. It was because of a couple of design flaws that were kind of deep in the system. The new security system was kind of a port of Katana. Katana was the original, our ON stack. It was a carrier from Katana, and there were some kind of fundamental flaws with that system. It had a thing called active and passive auth middleware.
Which I still don't know what
And
the
it got
difference
very
is.
confusing.
Yeah.
So you could have like cookies and Bearer token and Twitter and Google all active in the pipeline, and kind of and based on the ordering, it would do weird stuff.
And we didn't intend that.
And
so
and
that was
just
kind of the problem.
And that just
It kinda
happened
happened.
as a result of the design.
And
So-
then people took a dependency on that behavior,
And we broke it in
and then we
1.1.
fixed it in 1.1,
Yeah.
and broke everyone who had taken a dependency on that behavior.
So-
So
You're talking about Dominic Bear, right? Who's the only one who takes it.
And yeah.
we love Dominic.
Oh, yo, seriously,
He
his
helped
stuff is
us
amazing.
redesign it,
Yeah.
make it better.
So in 2.0, we took a step back and we kind of said, well, we have this cool system. We want the same things. We want to have a single piece of middleware in the pipeline and multiple auth services. So now we have services mapped by scheme. So you can say like add Twitter, add Google, and you have services that kind of map to those things.
Right.
And you can't have multiple active things. You can only say the default scheme is Twitter or Google or cookies. You can't say more than one. So we kind of made it so you can't mess it up this time. So there's no more multiple middlewares that kind of handle things on the fly. It's
Right.
kind of, you declare up front, I want to say the default sign-in scheme is Twitter. And then that's your entire...
And you can still do both. It's
Okay.
just that now it's designed to compose together. So
Right.
like in the app that we built in the workshop, we had both Twitter and
And
Google
Google.
Auth active in the app, but the user would just click which one they wanted, and then
Right.
it all just worked. Whereas in the old days, with the previous system, this whole
it was
multi-active
kind
thing,
of a handshakey
they
kind
would
of
kind
thing.
of stomp on each other, and it wasn't good.
And it feels to me like if you're doing something with security, you should probably be deliberate about every single thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. The funny thing was, like, when it broke, our developers kind of like didn't know what the behavior was. It's kind of like that was undefined.
Right.
But it turned out a couple of guys had taken a dependency on that behavior. So we fixed it, and it literally like broke tons of stuff. So we were like, oh wow.
And that was bad. I mean, for
It's
a lot
kind
of
of a
reasons. Like
fundamental,
our
like,
first
problem.
minor release,
Yeah.
which is meant to be a non-breaking release, like Semver, we're trying very hard to do that sort of stuff, and we broke like a fundamental thing, unintended. And so we went
yeah.
back to the drawing board and said, okay, we got to fix this in 2.0 and just make
Yeah.
it so we can't do that again.
So it's pretty much the same, but we kind of moved things off of the HTTP context. There was a thing called context.authentication manager. That probably has been deprecated, and now we have context.
Do stuff.
Yeah.
Sign
Sign in,
in.
sign out.
Right.
So we kind of hoisted the verbs onto the context directly instead of having this this type.
And how do you override that? Is there like a way to inject services into that to override the sign-in and stuff?
The interesting thing is we now have this thing called an authentication service. Before it wasn't there, so now you actually can decorate and wrap that thing and do whatever you want and override sign-in, sign-out behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I've walked through, for example, security token service and how that all works,
yeah.
and the open ID,
Yep.
little dance that we do every time, and it feels like you want to do this right. And so if you're
Yeah.
going to do it right, you've when you said there was things that happened and we weren't sure, I'm like, well, that we can't have that, right?
Yeah.
And so I understand why you would make this kind of
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah,
Yep,
Auth
yep.
is one of those areas. Like, it's funny. I've been at Microsoft 7 years, and I think we've gone through 4, maybe 5 now.
Different identity systems.
Auth/identity systems in ASP.NET of various flavors.
have a joke about it,
I
actually.
wrote one of them in 2012 for web forms. Like we did .NET Open Auth-based
Yep.
stuff in web forms. It just keeps changing. The landscape keeps changing because we went through like the OAuth, then OAuth 2, OpenID, OpenID Connect, WS Fed,
Yep.
and this all had just happened in the last 6 years. And before that, we had Windows Auth,
Username,
and
usernames
usernames and passwords. It
Forms
was
authentication,
fairly straightforward,
super
but everything is,
simple.
as systems become more connected and more heterogeneous, like things have become more complicated for good reason, but things get deprecated, but they don't go away.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of customers still using previous
WS
technologies,
Fed
WS Fed,
and
those type of
WS
things, while Auth continues to evolve and move forward. So it's an interesting problem space.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're using authorization Like, because you're looking at auth, and like if you're doing a SPA-like application, and the authentication and the authorization is managed by an ASP.NET backend, there's like weird cookie stuff that has to happen, and it's just,
Yeah.
It is complicated.
And API auth is a whole other kettle of fish, right?
We built an API in our workshop, and the backend has no authentication.
We didn't have time to do API auth, so we didn't do that in the workshop.
I haven't even heard of API auth. What is that?
So like, when you do auth in a browser, you typically issue a cookie, right? Because the browser is very nice and will manage that for you and send it back and forth. With APIs, your clients typically aren't always browsers, and so you have to use different mechanisms for issuing, both issuing a token and then round-tripping it. Like, how does the client send it back to you with each request? Typically, it's in a header. And there are standards that have evolved over that, like JOT tokens, right? Is what most people use now, but you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want ultimately, or you can use transport level security, the certificates and IPsec and all that type of stuff.
It feels like, though, friends, that you probably shouldn't do whatever you want. You should probably see what the industry is doing, right?
And it's not always one thing. That's the thing. Like you kind of have to understand the pros and cons of it and look at where it's going. Like I said, things have evolved. So.
We get sad over the file new options for identity because it's file new, MVC app, identity, like work in school,
in-app auth,
single user accounts,
delegated auth up to Azure, or use a different third-party product.
And you're kind of like, okay, I don't know what I want.
It's like I'm making
secure.
It's like you're choosing which college you're going to.
That's
you're like,
right.
I don't
know yet.
I can't decide.
I just don't want to store passwords. I just want to help me out.
Yeah, it's
don't store passwords.
Like those. Oh, jeez. Don't do that. So when I look at those options, and I'm like, well, every app that I'm ever going to build is going to need some kind of auth. And I'm always like, which one do I choose? And then when I do that, right? Like, let's just say I do the one with the regular identity provider that we have. There's like all of this code that's written.
A lot of code.
Okay, so we spoke about this. Like, we give you everything in the kitchen sink. We give you two-factor authentication, we give you email confirmation. We assume that you want everything by default, just in case.
Just in case. So none of it works out of the box because you have to like go through and sign up for third-party things to like send email, right?
Exactly.
So there's like comments like, put your thing here.
Yes, that's right.
Add code here to do 2FA or to do.
There is stuff you have to put here.
Yeah. I think we kind of overwhelm you, and that was because we wanted less choice in the template, but it came at a cost of like adding everything. All the code up front to the actual template. So I think in the future we will have more choices for identity and.
Well, I did corner Barry Dorans, who he gave a talk earlier, and I said, Barry, we're gonna write. I'm gonna do the default one, and you're gonna explain every class to me and every code.
That's awesome.
That's gonna be good. He's like, well. It's probably going to be like a 10-parter, it feels like, right? Because I looked at the tables that it creates just for Entity Framework. There's like 5 or 6 tables.
Yeah.
There's like just the controller for
450 line controller.
We joke about that one because like for other apps, you do file a new project and you copy those controllers into every app because it's so hard to like replicate. You just want to be like, you know what, it's done for me already. Let me copy it into different applications. So
just use a security token service.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously. Just get rid of that.
Yeah.
So the last thing, we have about 3 minutes, were the tag helper stuff.
Tag helpers.
So we added the ability, we have a new thing called an iTag helper component, which is kind of a tag helper, but not really. So effectively, if you wanted to be able to plug into an application through the DI container, and then sort of add a tag helper through DI, but one that the app developer is not going to interact with developers directly. They're not going to go like, let me put this tag helper here. It's like, no, I want to inject something that will put JavaScript at the end of the head tag.
On the page.
Or will register a CSS link automatically. Or we'll add some tracking script at the bottom of the page. We've enabled that. And so, for example, the application insights support in Azure uses this now with ASP.NET Core 2. So when you upload your ASP.NET Core 2 app to Azure, which doesn't have application insights in it, we can turn it on in the cloud for you and inject like stuff into the page at runtime, including the little JavaScript tracking stuff, so that you get page view tracking and all that type of stuff.
That's interesting because like I used to work for a component vendor, and our ASP.NET stuff, when we were moving from web forms over, we're like, wait a minute, we need to put stuff here and here.
So we used to have the script manager, right?
Yeah.
But the script manager only ever let you put stuff in one place.
Right.
And then MVC had nothing.
Yeah.
Right. It was just like, write your own helper and make sure they call it.
Yeah.
And so now we have a body tag helper and a head
tag helper.
tag helper built into the system, and then using the iTag helper component, you can kind of attach to those and get stuff injected into those two places.
Which is super helpful for
Yeah.
component people, right?
Yep.
If you're trying to write a reusable component,
exactly what it's for.
and you need to put something in the header, maybe
Yep.
something at the end of the body, and then
Yep.
something in the middle,
Yep.
you can do the regular tag helper for
Yep.
the middle and
Yep.
say it depends on the iTag.
And we've only just started. Like, we know there's
Yeah.
another composition thing. Like, you want to be able to like have lots of things call something and then have them cascade back up to the top. We haven't got to that place
So
yet, but this
one
is
thing you can't do is declare like dependencies on different scripts. So you can't have like
right.
jQuery and your component that depends on jQuery, and you can't just add them in any order and have them just appear.
Knock
in the-
out
yeah.
somewhere and stuff.
So that's kind of
that's
what
a
we're
problem we
thinking
still
about,
have to solve.
higher level
Yeah,
things.
that was the other thing is the ordering. Like,
Yeah.
It's the order, yeah.
yeah, if you're putting your thing first and then jQuery after, and it depends.
Doesn't
like,
work. Yeah.
So next step is like figure out how to do more composition of scripts.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
So
some
we are
pages.
out of time. That went by really fast.
Wow.
That was awesome.
Thanks so much for spending some time with us. Thanks so
Thanks.
much for watching. We have a session coming up, and then we have some more guests all the way to about 5. We're in NDC Oslo for the 2017 edition. It's really nice.
It's pretty good.
We'll see you after this break.